right? So today, for the first half an hour, I think, we will discuss on writing. Okay, not necessarily like writing, because you still have to do the writing of literature review. But first is the reviewing of the journals, books, or any other reports. That's very important. So if you have any question, just stop me and ask questions, okay? So definitely, reading, okay, requires a very high motivation, okay? Well, for those who love reading, this is definitely something very beneficial. But sometimes the what kind of readings? Is it novels? Is it storybooks? Okay, but then reading a scientific journal is another story. Okay, so we have to sort of prepare your mind. Okay, what is the objective of your reading on that day? What do you expect to gain from that particular paper or journal or books or any other reports? So this is very important. Everybody has different style. Everybody has different environment that gives you the motivation to read. So it's not actually the same. So that depends on you. Okay. So, but what I will share here is based on my experience that you need to have your me time to read. Okay. So this is actually not to say paper, because in your case, paper is not really important. But of course, this is your journey through your master's, and then one part is your master dissertation. It can be very time consuming and it can be problematic. But then, of course, all the challenges are similar. I mean, you also have faced this different kind of challenges. So just be patient and do what you have to do. Okay, right? And next one, as I said, before writing the literature review, we have to do the reviewing process, which is not just reading. Sometimes you read, but you cannot actually grab the gist from the paper. So that's why I said you you have your own motivation. Okay, what do you expect to get from this paper? So you have to be prepared in reading. So reviewing is reading, thinking, okay, and writing, of course. Okay. So we'll talk about the thinking part first. Okay. This goes straight to the thinking part. Okay. So definitely when we are at the level of solving problem, we are no longer understand or remember. Okay. Most of the time when we talk about understanding or remembering is actually lower level. And this is what we did when we are in the final year or undergraduate level. Okay. We remember and then we answer exams, or sometimes we understand and then we answer conceptual questions. Okay. So, and then probably you did your final year project. Okay. A bit of lab, a bit of research project in final year project. So that's where you apply your skills, which you have gone through for 2 or 3 years. Then you apply in your final year project. But now you are at different level. Okay, you start to do all this. You creating, evaluating, do a lot of analysis. Okay, which you have done because you are working. Most of majority of you are working. So I'm sure that you have done all this process during your working time. Yeah, because you receive problems and then you think about it, you evaluate, you try to create the the solution. Okay, so these things are, I mean, you experience without knowing that you are actually doing all this, and you analyze the problem, you evaluate, and you try to create the solution. Yeah, so that's why thinking should be there before you start to read. Okay, so this is just a guide, not to say that it is always like this. Okay, but just for your knowledge that the level of doing masters by research or PhD by research, okay, what are the scope that we are looking at? What are the the level of how deep you go for PhD, for masters? Okay, that's why you need to know on this. So for masters level, usually it's still sort of training. It's still sort of training. So not to say that you are doing a full scale research problem solving. Yeah? So it is a training, and usually for master's level, okay, is this the same if it is a full master by research? Usually what they did is improving something that has been done. You studied, and then we have a room of improvement, and we improve one scope or two scopes, but PhD can be beyond that. Okay, PhD can be beyond something. It can be something very novel, but it's difficult in Malaysia because if you are sponsored, you get 3 years of being sponsored, and within 3 years to do something very novel usually is not that realistic. Yeah. So what I heard, for example, in MIT, they did PhD for 8 years, 10 years before they can come up with something, out of this world. Okay, but they have a lot of money, so it's fine. I mean, they can sponsor their PhD students from 8 to 10 years and come up with a very, as I said, high level fundamental science, or a very good project. So that's related to, of course, financial support as well. Okay, right. All right, so these are the thinking level, or the scope sort of what you will be exploring during the master's or PhD level. Okay, so we look back at the thinking just now. So thinking critically before reading, okay, and during the reading. Okay, that has to be done. Okay, you cannot just read like you are reading simple novel. You have to set your mind. Okay, I'm reading and I want to gain something. What kind of information that you expect to get? Yeah, right. Okay, now, right. So this is what actually reviewing. Okay, the objective of doing review. Yeah, the objective of doing literature review. Okay. Okay, establish the terms and context. So definitely, when you are talking about solving problem, sometimes you are not really familiar with the terms, with the name of the material. We are looking for the new methods. We are looking for what kind of equations, what kind of temperatures, conditions that is required for you to be used in your project. So this is what reading are for. You are looking at what are the materials, okay, what are the suitable materials, what are the suitable methods. Okay, so you are looking at this from the literature review. Okay, how else you know what's been done already, you see. Okay, during literature review, as I said last week, is something that very important, because you need to know what has been solved, what are the solutions already on the table. So are they satisfiable or satisfactory? Okay, so you look at it, okay, whether it is satisfactory or it is satisfactory for your purposes. As I said, sometimes the solution is there, but it's not good enough for our country. It's not good enough for our people because it's not suitable. So there are room for improvement. So you know, like the nature of your workplace, you need this kind of solution. So you know there is another solution, but not suitable for your um, working place or for your institution. So you want to improve. Okay, you know the capacity of your institution and you want to improve. So that's why you need to read. Explore ways that others have solved similar questions. Okay, the same thing, yeah? You want to look at what have they done in somewhere else, and then whether it suits your institution, and then how can you improve the solution that they have, okay? Outlines the relationship of these texts to each other. How else we will know that the different perspectives and debates are okay? These are debates on the science usually, okay? Because scientists have disputes among each others. Of course, definitely we have these disputes not just on science, but in so many things. Okay, that's why we need to read on different perspectives, just like listening to our friends or your staff, for example. When we have disputes, we have to listen to many perspectives. Don't just listen to one person and you conclude, okay, this is the best practice. No, should be from a different perspective. Okay, evaluate the quality and relevance. Okay, right. Okay, right. This is like choosing the right literature. Okay, so I will talk about this, how to choose the a good, yeah, a good literature, because uh, this most of the cases sometimes we forgot, okay, to look at the uh, authenticity, okay, the quality of the paper or the quality of the textbook or the quality of that scientist. Yeah? We tend to be happy, or I have actually obtained the information and we take it, but we have to look at how good the resources is. Okay, because as I don't know whether you have heard about the retraction of papers. Okay, paper being taken out from the journals because of the fraud. Yeah? Okay, those cases are real. Yeah? The reports on drugs, the reports on treatment, sometimes they are based on false data. Okay, so this happened. Establish the gaps or inadequacies. How else would you justify your own contribution? Okay, we talk about the gap last week. So definitely you have your own solution now that you want to add in to improve, or it's a totally new solution. So you have to look at the gap, or someone else has done the same thing. So it's not really filling the gap, okay? But it's okay. You look at what they have done. Okay, probably, okay, I can improve more. Okay, what they have done might be not good enough. Again, then you can improve from their solution. So that's why reading requires um, for you to be open mind. Okay, do not be biased. Okay, do the search properly. That's why when the library is offering you to enter their courses like citation index journal, they will teach you on how to browse journals, especially those who are in UPM's subscription. Okay, so because you can do the browsing at your own place, and you don't have to come to UPM. Okay, everything is online, but it requires you to log in and somehow look at what are the journals or the textbook that is taught for you in UPM library. So you have to attend uh, the courses to the training to search for journals. Demonstrates your scholarly regard. Okay, this is how else can I have faith in your conclusion? Okay, that one is actually interrelated with the others. Okay, so what, in short, okay, these are the purpose of doing literature, to convince you about your solution is something not totally new, but filling in the gaps, and the gap is significant. Okay, the gap is significant, it is real. Okay, you are proposing, you are contributing a significant contribution to that particular problem. Okay, right. Okay, again, this is the literature review, the same thing. Okay, so now that you have set your mind to think critically, okay, the most important is to sort, okay, to focus what kind of reading that you want, what kind of material that you want to start with. Okay, you want to start with textbook or you want to start with journals. Okay, so what were the research aims of the paper or book? Means that when you start to read, what is your purpose when you start to read? What do you actually aiming to get? What kind of information? So if the research aim achieved, if so, okay, this one is when you have, let's say, one journal paper and you know that you wish to do related to that particular issue, okay? So when you look at the journal, you see whether they have obtained or achieved their objective. So how did they do it? Means that you would like to know what kind of methods they use, what kind of material they use, okay? Was it a strong or weak research model? Okay, because you have done a lot of reading, so you can have, you can differentiate, okay? This guy is doing a good work and have a good report. And this guy is actually on the very superficial, okay? There's sort of a secret that he or she still keep, okay? So how will the research help your own research? So now you can actually sort, yeah, do the sorting. Okay, this paper is not good, it's not related, even though you have printed it out, okay? But you need to sort, okay, when you read through, okay, this is not really a good paper, this is not really a good solution. I think the science is not, it's not really solid. So you can now sort your reading, okay? And then how will this research help with your own research? Okay, that one is, I said, this is the time you do the sort. Okay, you think that this is the most important papers. Okay, you put it one section, and probably you have another paper that slightly important. So you have another section, and another one. Okay, this is just, you just want to keep it, but it's not really what you want to look at this moment. Okay, so that's why reading requires sorting for you to identify which one, which paper is your priority, which book is your priority, and probably you have a second less uh, in your priority. And then the third one is just for you to keep. Probably one day you remember that, okay, that's what I read in that. I remember that I read it somewhere. Okay. So what can you take from it? What needs to be avoided? What are you doing differently? Okay, this is related to the problem that, or the solution that you have suggested. Okay, so when you read journals, okay, or when you read books, okay, you don't need to read everything. Definitely is something that um, it's not doable and it's not practical. You don't need to read every word, you don't need to read every text, because you already knew what you want to obtain from that particular journal or particular books. Okay, that's why you need to have the objective or what you want to obtain before reading. So you don't need to read everything. But doing the sorting, okay, All right. What I did is whenever I read a journal, when I did my PhD, not now, I don't have time to do that. You have a logbook. Okay. So logbook is not just when you do lab analysis, you jot down the, data or any other results. The logbook is important for you to log your reading. Okay. So today, let's say today is 6 November. So you are reading something, title, whatever, and from what resources? For example, this journal is from molecules, for example, the name of the journal. So you have to properly jot down the resources, okay? Because one day you think that you have read through this information, but you do not know where, which is the resources, which is the actual resource that you have used. And that time you regret that you do not jot down. Okay, so this is based on my experience. Whenever that you read a journal, please jot down the title of the journal. Not you do not need to write the authors or whatsoever, but the resource. The resource means the volume, so that you can just go back to the journal whenever that you need to, right? And usually when I read an important one, a journal that I think is very important for me, and I find it is very useful for me, I jot down also the points, the keywords there. So I know whenever that I open the logbook, okay, the keywords are there, and the journal is that particular journal that I can trace back. Okay, during my time, it was all hard copy. So now that most journals, okay, are accessible through browsing, okay, so that's very good, okay, which is you have to do another type of logbook, okay. You can do it via electronics, and I'm sure that you are much better than old people like me. But please get organized. So please organize your reading. Okay, if you think that the resources is very good, so please log in, whether in your computer or in your hard copy log book. Yeah, right. So as I said, you do not need to read everything, which is you can't. Okay, because there's so many words there. Okay, so the first reading, let's say the first reading you want to know about the methodology. So you just look through the rest, introduction, so but you zoom in on the methodology. But let's say the next time you want to read, you want to obtain on the results, particular results. So you just zoom in on the particular results. Okay, you know the keywords there. Okay, you want to know about the temperature. So you zoom in on the temperature. That's why you need to keep it, because you are going to read the same journal, the same textbook, or whatever resources many times, not just one. Okay? Because every time you want to read, you want to obtain different kind of information, not the same information. Okay, all right. Now, just now we talk about the quality of journal. Okay, so sometimes this is what we get. So if you look at the first one, the first scientist is saying, but we destroyed 10% of cancer cells in a lab rat still. But when someone twists it, when someone twists it, cancer cured, means that from here is 10% only, but the reporting sometimes are twisted into something, because people want to catch the readers, so they twisted the cancer cure. So that's why when you read science reports, we have to be in the mind of scientists. When we look at the percentage, we look at the values. Okay, we do not look at the what kind of word? So this like cancer cure is something like in newspapers. It is useful in newspapers because they want to catch readers. But for us, we are looking at a very a good data. Okay, we want to look at, okay, if that person is saying it's 10%, it so mean that the solution is working for 10% only. So there is 90% improvement that can be done. What's wrong with the what's wrong? Why it only can kill 10% of cancer cells? Why it cannot be improved another 90%? Okay, so that sort of question that we should ask, and that sort of question that we need to fill in the gap. Okay, so whenever that you read, this should be in your mind. You're looking at something solid. What's the evidence? Why the results are saying when the discussion are not similar to the results being shown. If you look at the graph is reporting, for example, 40%, but the statement is saying that it is a very successful experiment. Or okay, so that's why we need to be very critical, looking at the literatures. So, okay, this is again the same idea from from what we have discussed last week, which is on the problem. So I'm not going to repeat that again. Okay, all right. So I think we go back to what we have discussed just now. Okay, starting from choosing the journals or whatever resources, documents that you wish to read. You look at the title, you look at the quality, and then you just browse through and you sort first, sort the most important, second most important, and probably less important. Depends on you how to sort. And then when you read the important journals or important resource, you try your best to organize it, you log it. Okay, this is what you obtain from the journals. And then looking at the data, you have to think critically whether the data is actually solid science or it's actually very, it's not really convincing. So you yourself has to decide that. Okay. And now from all those data, from all those information that you have obtained, this is where you start doing the literature review writing. So literature review writing is actually, I'm not trying to scare you, but it is in fact very difficult when we are trying to write a thesis. Okay, because literature review writing, you are actually presenting, as I put here, you are presenting the facts after you have read hundreds of journals, for example, and you are mixing all those information and you are presenting the facts after all the information has been digested in you. And then again, you are not just presenting, you also have to criticize. You have to criticize means that you have to put on your thinking whether it is a good one or the weaknesses of that particular scientific report. Okay, you think that he has done well or he or she has done well, okay, which is good, or he or she has done something wrong and you criticize them. Okay, the purpose of criticizing is not for you to share or to actually downgrade that scientist, but is for you to write in your thesis. You want to avoid that weak points. It's, for example, if you know that material A is not suitable being used in certain temperature, or material B is not suitable being used because of the life hydrophilic or hydrophobic characteristic, for example, and you find that the journal is using the material in the wrong way, but they come out with the wrong conclusion. So you can criticize them. So in science, it's okay to criticize, and you can write it in a good way, in a good words in your literature review. Why? Because those information are important for you, because you do not want to repeat the blunders. You do not want to repeat the same mistakes in your experiment later. And at the same time, it's actually for other people's, when people read your literature review or review papers, then they should be thankful to you. You have pointed out a good facts presentation and a good critics, yeah? So that we do not repeat the same blunders. Okay, right. So as I said, writing, reading, and writing literature review is actually can be very difficult. Yeah? So I just want to share an example of my students' review. Okay, let me stop share this one. All right. So can you see the detection and control of Ganoderma boninense? Can you see that?
Yes, Prof.
Right. So this is an example of literature review writing. So it depends on you. What kind of what are the scopes that you want to talk about, or what kind of scopes? What are the scopes that you wish to write on? Okay, for example, this guy, this is my student, Mr. Rusbe, as well as Mr. Sabo. They are doing on the issue of Ganoderma boninense, and both of them are actually trying to solve the issue of monitoring of Ganoderma boninense. Yeah. So this is written by Mr. Rusbe. So before they can solve, not to say solve, come up with the solution, they have to read a lot, and you can see that they are trying to look at the detection. So the scope are detection, which is monitoring, and control of Ganoderma boninense, strategies and perspective. So you cannot write from sea to sky on Ganoderma boninense because it's not important. Okay, it's not important for people. For example, talking about the disease itself, you don't have to write detail on the disease. Okay, that depends on who's going to read your thesis. Yeah. So in general, this guy, Mr. Rusbe, has written the about the oil palm and the disease itself, but it's not that detailed. Okay, but he wrote about infection and transmission, which is very important for us if we want to suggest a monitoring problem, because we need to know how the infection happened. So if it is, let's say in future, we need to do sampling, what kind of sample, or where do we sample to get to know whether the tree is infected or not? Is it the soil or is it the roots? Okay, so that's why infection and transmission information is very important. Okay, so for you to decide what to write in literature review, you have to think about what is related to your solution. Okay, why is it that information is important? Because you do not just write, as I said, from sea to sky related to that particular problem. You don't have to tell everything. You need to prioritize on the scope. Okay, so this one I talk about. So as you can see that he obtained information from a few researchers. Okay, Arifin, you can see different people that he cites. Yeah? Okay, how the infection and transmission. And then he started to talk about the detection, because the title of the review, which is on the detection and control. Okay, so monitoring is of course related to detection. So what people have done on detection of the Ganoderma boninense issue. So there are physical observations. Okay, as you can see, I hope that you can observe the language that he used. It's like talking to people, telling people about the problems, okay, the solutions. Okay, and then another one is control. These are open access journal. So there's a lot of review journal in open access. So I don't think that you have any issue if you want to read a good literature review. So later he talks about control. Okay, so control probably not related to his project actually, because his project is on the monitoring, but it's a good additional information. Okay, but for me, if he writes this information in his thesis, I actually strike it out because it's not related to his solution. His solution is on monitoring. Okay, but this information are very good because in order to understand the issue, we also need to understand how they are being controlled. Okay, and then talk about resistant planting. Okay, right. So as you can see, it is very focused. So again, if you are writing a literature review, make sure that you know what is the focus first, and then read, sort, think. Well, you have to think, of course, from step one until writing. Okay. So I hope that you grab the idea of how to do literature review. Any question on that before we go or take a break? Literature, reading, thinking, writing. Okay, good journals, good resources. Why we have to do that? Okay, the objective of doing literature. Okay, one last point is on this disputes. Yeah, as I
Prof,
said, yeah.
Can I ask a question? Right now, like earlier, you were saying that our literature review, the quality of our all the articles, right? Is that all based on our findings? Like the quality is based on our findings, is it?
The quality, there are different views. One is you look at what journals is that, because journals, that's why it's very important for you to enroll in journal browsing, because journals itself has what we call as high impact factor, means that it is a good journal. We also the journals also are classified into quartile 1, quartile 2, Q1, Q2. So you can look at the journals in that particular perspective. Okay, the impact factor as well as the quartile. The other one is based on your information that you already know from the fundamental, from the lectures. Okay, and then when you read the journal, the finding of that particular scientist, you think that it is wrong. Maybe it is published in a good journal, but you think it is wrong. So it's up for you how to decide to sort your information. Okay, but
Okay. All right, Prof. But you were saying that if like we want to see the impact, right? Like there is quarter one, quarter two. How do we identify that quality of the journal or the article you were saying? How is that for us to get to know that like the percentage of like it's like maybe 80% this journal is better comparatively to the other journal? How do we differentiate that? Is there a way for us to find out that?
okay. For me, for most scientists, we look at as I said, the impact factor, okay, and the quartile, the Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, okay. So if it is Q1 journal, of course, it's good. It's supposed to be good, and the higher the impact factor is supposed to be a good journal. And you know, publishers like Elsevier, publishers like there's quite a number of publishers, journal publishers that actually accepted by worldwide scientists. Okay, so if you look at you need to look at the publishers as well. Yeah. The other way of looking at journals, as I said, you have gone through the practice. You have went to the class and you know the science already. So you know the science already, and then you read the journal. So if based on your conscience that the journal is good, okay, the science is solid, yes. But sometimes you know by reading that this is not good. This is opposite of what you, not to say opposite. If this is not parallel with what your understanding on the fundamental of science, for example, then you sought the information. But in general, we evaluate the journals based on the quartile and the impact factor as well as the publishers, because usually if it is a good publisher like Elsevier, then of course the impact factor is usually quite high. Okay.
All right, Prof. Thank you.
I don't know whether I answer your question or not, but this is how we look at the journals. But of course, you have to, even though it comes from a good publisher, a good impact factor, a good quartile, you have to look at the information. And from that, you know, okay, what you have gone through in class is different than the science that in the journal. So be very critical. Be very critical in reading, not just to accept all informations. Not to, you have to think and you have to sieve the information. Okay, so as I said, scientists have disputes, disagrees, agrees with school of thoughts, built on the conclusion, confirmed. Okay, this is common, so you do not need to worry about the disputes. As long as you think that the science that you are based on is solid. Okay, so this is important because one day you have to present. You have to present your proposal. You have to present your final seminar. So when you present your proposal and final seminar, of course, you have to give your thoughts. You have to give your conclusion based on your data as well as based on your fundamental science that you have understood. Okay, this is based on this chemical reaction, or this is based on this equation, this law. Okay, this is what you have understood, this is what you have read, and this is what you have observed. Okay, so that's why, let's say the evaluator or the reviewer asks you, I don't agree. It's fine. Okay, do not panic. Do not panic. I don't. Whenever if the panels evaluate and say something, I do not agree with your conclusion, for example. But it's normal in science. So you just have to argue based on your knowledge, okay, based on what you have read, based on the data. So do not panic. I mean, you just present your knowledge and data that you have obtained, for example, for 1 year. Yeah. All right. Next one. Okay. As I said, why disputes happen? Not to say that it happens most of the time. People usually have the same agreement. So we look at this. Sometimes people can see 4. Sometimes, if you look at it in a different angle, you see 3. So these disputes happens. Reality can be so complex that equally valid observation from different perspectives can appear to be contradictory. So I'm just saying that in science, fundamental science usually is solid, but when we talk about applications, there's a lot of disputes. So don't worry about that. So when are they going to be, okay, what are the strengths? What evidence is lacking, inconclusive, or what we will add to the topic? Okay, again, I think, right. So basically, you have to do the reading first before doing the writing. Okay, so literature review, the best way to know how to write literature review is looking at the example. Okay, looking at the example, you find a good thesis, you find a good review paper, then you learn from the paper itself how to write a literature review. Okay, it's actually, I find it that is the best way to learn how to write literature review. So I think we take a break just for a few minutes, okay, before we discuss on writing objective, because writing objective is actually quite short. So I don't think we can finish up executive summary. We just focus on writing objective, yeah? All right, just 5 minutes break, okay? All right. Can we continue? Because we need to stop by 3.
Okay, bro.
All right, okay. So we start to right. So objectives, okay. So starting from, we have done the identification and the justifying the problem, and then we have strengthened the convince ourselves of the problem through a good literature review. Okay, so we are now convinced and we have proper knowledge on what have been achieved, what have been what are the solutions available for that particular problem. And then you know from your reading as well, you have obtained information like methods, suitable methods, and not suitable methods as well, okay, the negative and the positive. What are the blunders that you do not want to repeat from your literature review, okay? So writing objective, because now you have identified the problems, writing objective is something that what you want to achieve, okay? So first and foremost, is for you to understand the general aim. Okay, so what do you want to really achieve by the end? Okay, I find it very practical if we develop the objective by using a general objective as well as specific objective. Okay, because when you have a specific objective, you can use this specific objective to develop methods, to develop the experimental design later, which I do not know what we will do it probably after executive summary. Okay, so general objective, for example, this is the project that I have worked on for detection of metal ions in environmental samples. So this is just like saying something in loose form. Okay, what I want to achieve for this project is to have a good monitoring of metal ions or toxic metals in environmental samples. This is what I am aiming at, okay, in general, okay. And then because it is a scientific proposal, I have to also point out what's the new thing in my development of practical sensor. So my new thing here is I would like to exploit amino acids and peptide as the recognition elements, because I'm from chemistry, so I have to highlight the chemistry. Yeah? Because if I talk about the practical sensor, it can be a sensor from engineering perspective, it can be from IoT perspective. So, but for me, because I'm from chemistry background, so my focus will be exploiting the chemistry. Okay, so to use amino acids and peptides as the chemical marker for the toxic metals. So that's why understanding what you want to do is very important first, because that will determine the scope of work. Okay, for example, if you only have 1 semester for your lab, for example, or less than 1 year. Okay, so you need to be very practical. You do not put a very big scope for your objective. Okay, so now the aim of this project, okay, this is actually for a PhD one. So PhD is 3.5. Okay, and then once you have put the general aim, we start to talk about the specific aim. Why we put specific aim? Because we want to see how many months for each activities can be obtained, can be achieved, can be completed. Okay, so from this general objective, there are few key points that I have to complete. That for example, for me to achieve is 1, to get the amino acid and peptides, a selective amino acid and peptides. So in this case, I put the development of nanotransducers because of the catchy words at that time is nano. So that's why I put nanotransducers, but it's actually a combination of peptides and amino acids with nanomaterial. So in short, I put nanotransducers. So the first objective is for me to actually synthesize the peptides. So I imagine, based on my knowledge, based on what I knew that I have in the lab, what kind of instruments that I have in the lab, I foresee that I can complete in 6 months for the synthesis of peptides and amino acids. So that's why when you draft objective, you have to think about the time factor and financial, of course, as well as what do you already have in your lab. Okay, so that's why you need to check whether you have the instruments. Is the instruments working? Do you have access to the material so that you can complete the first objective within 6 months or 3 months? Is up to you. Okay, so I decided that I want to finish this up for the first objective within 6 months. It can be 3 months. You can draft the first objective based on 3 months. It's up to you. Even 1 month. It's up to you. So let's say the 6 months, I have managed to complete the synthesis of amino acids and peptides and combine with the nanomaterial. Okay, so how do I declare that this is completed? Okay, so as I mentioned in my video, that objective, especially specific objective, yeah, I'm not talking about general objective, specific objective has to be measurable. Okay, so it cannot be like to study, to understand, because you cannot measure those kind of words. You cannot measure to study, okay? Or to understand, you cannot measure to understand. You have, when I use the word develop, okay, those people in my study, they know. Develop means that you have to synthesize and you have completely characterized. Okay, the word develop is understood by most of us. You have actually a complete story starting from synthesis, character, and the characterization part. Okay, so again, when we talk about nanomaterial, when it is said that it is fully characterized, means that the let's say the one who wants to evaluate will know what to look. They want to look at the the evidence of the nano. Okay, for example, where is the SAM, PSAM, where is the HRTM, where is the FTIR results, because you mentioned about amino acid and peptides. So there must be evidence that the amino acids and peptide has been fully characterized. Where is the, for example, NMR is not needed, HPLC results telling that the peptides are selective towards, for example, certain metal ions. Okay, sorry, for the purification of the peptides. Okay, so this is what expected by those who are already in the field. They know when you say develop, they would like to see all these results. Okay, they know it should be there. When you're talking about synthesis, you're talking about full characterization, it should be there. So you don't have to say it, okay, to run GCMS, to run FTIR, to run, no, that is not objective. That is activities. So you do not have to be very specific telling what you want to do, to run GCMS, to run FTIR, to run HPLC, because those are falls under one word, develop. Okay. So writing objective, sometimes, okay, it actually requires you to be practical, okay, whether you can achieve in 6 months, 3 months. So the second one is it has to be measurable, okay. So you know, in this word develop, you should contain the evidence of the synthesis and the evidence of the characterization. If it is nano, what are the nano evidence that you have? And now once you have this, the sensors, sort of the sensors that works, we are moving to the second objective. Okay. So the second objective for us is actually to test whether the sensing ability of that developed nanotransducers is actually reliable. So the word characterize the sensing ability for us, because we have we are working on a group of people. So you do not need to spell out what are the characterization of the sensing ability. When those people read, they know, okay, in sensing ability means that you need to know you already have a good reproducibility, a solid sensing principle, sensitivity, selectivity, results, all should be under this second objective for you to declare that the second objective is complete. Okay, so that's why the word chose, okay, the words that you choose to be in the objective is very important, because it represents a group of works, a group of lab activities attached to it. Characterize, develop, okay, to apply. Okay, so let's say I'm aiming at to complete this project within 2 years, because usually our grant requires us to complete in 2 years. So I'm giving this, because this is the toughest one, the first one. So I'm giving this 6 months. So probably the second one, I'm giving it to three months, okay, to complete the characterization of sensing ability. So you must also remember when presenting objective, you have to think about the possibility of instruments broke down. You buy chemicals, requires you 3 months, 6 months to arrive in Malaysia. Those kind of thing has to be take into consideration. Okay, so this is things that we need to think about. Unless all the materials are already there, and you know you have access to the instruments, will be no issue. Okay, that one is fine. Okay, but for most of the times, they are, that's what we talk about risk management. Yeah? The instruments might be broken down. There are financial issues. There are materials not being delivered on time. Yeah? Those things are very important to consider when you are drafting objective. Okay, let's say the third one, okay, to develop the microarray system to apply. So the word apply, okay, means that you are doing something on the real sample, and they expect, for those people working in this area, they expect you also did a good validation with the standard technique. For example, if I'm doing metal ions analysis, then I need to have a solid analysis with ICP to compare with my sensor developed for my developed sensor. So I cannot just say that I have applied successfully on real sample, but I haven't done any validation with a standard technique like ICP or AAS. Okay. So the words, as I said, the words that you choose to write your objective are very important. Yeah? So you do not need to write details, because those are what we call as lab activities, not objective. Okay. Right. So when you decide on the time, okay, let's say if you have 1 year project, so how many objectives do you think that is suitable? How many objectives is practical for 1 year project?
One.
One? It can be one, because you are the one who define it. Okay, you think that you just want one objective, and you know that that one objective covers 1 year. Okay, let's say less than 1 year, because you need to write reports, right? So that's okay. Yeah, that's okay. You are the one who drafts the objective. But as I said, let the objective be meaningful, meaningful, measurable, practical enough. Do not write too many objectives. In the end, you cannot achieve. Yeah? So the word objectives is actually very meaningful, and you know, and the group of people that work on the same area should also know. Okay, they usually know. For example, when I say sensing ability, they know what kind of experiment, what kind of result that should be under that particular objective. Okay, questions? Question? Because you need to write a literature review and objective after this for your assignment. Okay. So we actually have another 20 minutes, but I would like to have questions from you, because your first assignment will be writing literature review and objective only. Okay, so the first assignment is to write literature and objective only. So we are going to discuss executive summary next week. Okay, so do you have any questions on writing literature and objective?